The dust rose from the packed earth of Main Street as the sound of hooves slowed to a stop outside Mabel's general store. Olivia Grant stared out the window, pausing with her hand on the bolt of calico she'd been organizing. She'd seen the storm brewing on the horizon, a black wall of clouds that had swallowed the distant mountains whole. And now, as if delivered by that very storm, a stranger had arrived in Provo, Utah Territory, 1874. "Miss Grant, I need these flour sacks moved to the back before the rain hits," Mr. Holloway called from behind the counter. "Yes, sir," she replied, though her eyes lingered on the stranger. He dismounted with the smooth grace of a man who'd spent more time in a saddle than on his own 2 feet. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with purpose, tying his horse at the post before ducking his head against the rising wind and disappearing into the saloon across the street. The first fat drops of rain began to fall as Olivia hefted the flour sacks. At 22, she was no stranger to hard work. Since her parents had died of fever 3 years ago, she'd been on her own, grateful for the room above the store that came with her position. Mr. Holloway was fair, if not generous, and Provo was a decent town safer than most in these parts. By the time she finished storing the flour, the rain was pounding against the roof, drumming a chaotic rhythm that matched the thunderclaps overhead. Lightning flashed, illuminating the darkened store in brief, ghostly bursts of light. Mr. Holloway lit the lamps, muttering about the storm keeping customers away. "You can go on up if you'd like, Miss Grant," he offered. "Ain't nobody coming out in this weather." Olivia nodded gratefully. "Thank you, sir. I'll finish the inventory tomorrow." She was halfway up the narrow stairs to her room when the door burst open, bringing with it a gust of wind and rain. The stranger from earlier stumbled in, supporting the weight of another man whose face was drawn with pain. "Need help," the stranger said, his voice deep but strained. "My friend took a fall when his horse spooked." Mr. Holloway rushed forward. "Doc Peterson's just 3 doors down, but he won't be able to make it back here in this weather." The injured man groaned. "Nathan, my leg." "I know, Owen." "Just hold on," the stranger Nathan replied, his eyes scanning the store until they landed on Olivia, still frozen on the stairs. "Miss, any chance you know something about setting bones?" Olivia hesitated only a moment before descending. "My father was a doctor. I assisted him often before he passed." Relief flickered across Nathan's face, a handsome face, she noticed now, despite being half hidden beneath the shadow of his hat and several days' worth of stubble. His eyes were the color of a summer sky, startling in their clarity. "Thank you," he said simply. Together, they got Owen settled in the back room where Mr. Holloway kept a cot for his occasional naps. The leg was broken, but the bone hadn't pierced the skin. While Mr. Holloway went to fetch some whiskey for the pain, Olivia gathered what supplies she could. "I'm Olivia Grant," she said as she cut away the man's trouser leg. "Nathan Maddox," the cowboy replied, then nodded toward his friend. "Owen Barton, we're pushing cattle north from Texas. A long way from home, then." Nathan's mouth quirked slightly. "Home is wherever the trail takes us, Miss Grant." The setting of Owen's leg was a painful business, even with half a bottle of whiskey in him. Nathan held his friend down, his face impassive but his knuckles white with the strain. When it was done, Owen passed out, which Olivia assured was a blessing. "He'll need to stay still for several weeks," she told Nathan, washing blood from her hands in a basin. "The bone needs time to heal properly." Nathan removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. He ran a hand through it, looking troubled. "We can't stay that long. The herd, then you'll need to leave him behind," she interrupted firmly. "Unless you want him to lose that leg entirely." Their eyes met in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Nathan nodded. "You're right, of course. I'll make arrangements." The storm showed no signs of abating as evening fell. Mr. Holloway offered to let Owen stay in the back room for the night, with Nathan sleeping on the floor beside him. Olivia brought them extra blankets and a lamp before retiring to her own room upstairs. She lay awake, listening to the storm rage. Something about the cowboy downstairs troubled her, and it wasn't just his obvious concern for his friend. There was a wariness in his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that spoke of a man who expected trouble to follow him like a shadow. Dawn broke with surprising clarity. The The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a washed, clean world and a brilliant blue sky. Olivia rose early, dressed, and went downstairs to check on their patients. Owen was awake, pale but alert. Nathan, however, was nowhere to be seen. He went to check on the herd, Owen explained when she asked. Said he'd be back by noon, but noon came and went with no sign of Nathan Maddox. Owen grew increasingly anxious as the hours passed. Something's wrong, he insisted when Olivia brought him lunch. Nathan wouldn't just leave me here. Olivia tried to reassure him, but as afternoon turned to evening, she found herself watching the door with growing concern. It was nearly dusk when the town's deputy burst into the store. "Mr. Holloway, there's been trouble out at Simmons' place. A stampede, cattle everywhere, and at least one man down." Olivia's heart seized. "Was it Nathan Maddox?" The deputy looked surprised. "You know him." "Yeah, that's the fella. They're bringing him in now." 20 minutes later, Nathan was carried into the store on an improvised stretcher, unconscious and bloodied. Doc Peterson arrived shortly after, grim-faced as he examined the cowboy. "Took a bad kick to the head," the doctor told Olivia and Mr. Holloway. "Couple of broken ribs too, from the looks of it. He's lucky to be alive. Will he?" Olivia couldn't finish the question. Doc Peterson sighed. "Head injuries are tricky things, Miss Grant. We'll know more when he wakes up." They moved Nathan to the back room, setting up another cot beside Owen's. The doctor did what he could, cleaning and bandaging the visible wounds, before leaving with instructions to send for him if Nathan's condition changed. That night, Olivia barely slept. She checked on both men regularly, noting with relief that Owen seemed to be improving, while Nathan remained stubbornly unconscious, his breathing shallow but steady. By morning, half the town knew about the two injured cowboys at Holloway's general store. Several women from the church brought food, while curious onlookers found sudden needs for supplies they'd never required before. "You don't have to stay," Mr. Holloway told Olivia when she appeared at the store after missing breakfast. "I can manage the customers." "I'd rather keep busy," she replied, though her eyes drifted toward the back room. It was late afternoon when a commotion from that direction sent her rushing back. Nathan was awake, attempting to sit up despite Owen's protests. "The herd," Nathan was saying, his voice rough. You need to lie still before you undo all the doc's work," Olivia interrupted, hurrying to his side. Nathan's blue eyes found hers, confusion evident in their depths. "Miss Grant, at least you remember who I am," she said, gently but firmly pressing him back onto the cot. "That's a good sign." "The herd," he repeated stubbornly, "is being taken care of," Owen assured him. "Simmons sent word. They've got your men staying on his property, helping round up the scattered cattle." Some of the tension left Nathan's body, though he winced as he settled back. "How long was I out?" "Just overnight," Olivia told him. "Though from what the doctor said, you're lucky it wasn't permanent." A shadow crossed his face at her words. "Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to put me in the ground." Olivia exchanged a glance with Owen, who looked away uncomfortably. There was a story there, one neither man seemed eager to share. Over the next few days, Nathan's physical recovery progressed well. The cut on his temple healed, the bruising around his ribs faded from angry purple to sickly yellow, and he was able to move about with only occasional grimaces of pain. But something else had changed, something less visible, but somehow more concerning. He barely spoke. Where before he'd been reserved but polite, now Nathan retreated into a silence so profound it seemed almost physical. He would respond if directly addressed, usually with the fewest words possible, but otherwise kept to himself. Even Owen seemed at a loss for how to reach his friend. "It happens sometimes, after a bad knock to the head," Doc Peterson said when Olivia mentioned it during his follow-up visit. "The mind needs time to heal, same as the body." But Olivia wasn't convinced. She'd seen the look in Nathan's eyes when he thought no one was watching, not confusion or disorientation, but something darker, more deliberate. It wasn't that he couldn't speak, it was that he'd chosen not to. A week after the stampede, Owen was well enough to be moved to the boarding house down the street, where he'd have more comfortable accommodations during his extended recovery. Nathan, physically recovered enough to leave but clearly not ready to abandon his friend, took a room there as well. Olivia told herself she should be relieved. The back room was restored to its original purpose, the store returned to normal operation, and her life could go back to its quiet routine. But instead, she found herself watching the door, hoping for a glimpse of the taciturn cowboy who had so thoroughly disrupted her peace of mind. She got her wish 3 days later when Nathan appeared at the store, hat in hand. Mr. Holloway was out, leaving Olivia to manage alone. "Mr. Maddox," she greeted him, surprised at how pleased she was to see him. "How are you feeling?" He nodded, which she took to mean he was well enough. His eyes roamed the store before settling back on her. "Need supplies," he said, the words coming out as if each cost him something precious. "Of course, what can I help you with?" He handed her a list, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. Olivia felt a ridiculous flutter in her chest at the contact, but busied herself gathering the items he required: coffee, tobacco, ammunition for a Winchester rifle, and various foodstuffs. As she worked, she tried to engage him in conversation. "How is Mr. Barton doing?" "Better." The word hung in the air, solitary and insufficient. "And the cattle, have they all been recovered?" Nathan's jaw tightened. "Most." Olivia sighed, frustrated by his monosyllabic responses. "Mr. Maddox, have I done something to offend you?" His eyes widened slightly, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him in days. He shook his head. "Then why won't you speak to me? Or to anyone, from what Owen says?" Nathan's gaze dropped to the counter between them. For a long moment, Olivia thought he might not answer at all. Then, so quietly she had to lean forward to hear him, he said, "Words don't come easy anymore." The simple admission, clearly difficult for him to make, touched her deeply. "Because of the injury," he shrugged one shoulder. "Maybe. Or maybe I've just run out of things worth saying." Before she could respond, the bell above the door jangled as 3 men entered the store. Nathan tensed immediately, his hand drifting toward his hip, where, Olivia realized belatedly, a pistol was holstered. The newcomers were trail-worn and dusty, with the hard eyes of men who'd seen more than their share of violence. The leader, a tall man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, spotted Nathan and smiled coldly. "Well, well, Nathan Maddox, as I live and breathe, heard you might be in these parts." Nathan's expression remained impassive, but Olivia could see the slight shift in his stance, the way he subtly positioned himself between her and the strangers. "Crawford," he acknowledged, the single word heavy with history. The man called Crawford leaned against the counter, deliberately casual. "Still running from your past, Maddox, or have you finally decided to face what you did?" "I don't want trouble," Nathan said, each word measured and precise. Crawford laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Bit late for that, wouldn't you say? You brought trouble the moment you drew breath." His eyes flicked to Olivia. "Pretty little thing, you've found yourself here. Does she know who you really are?" Nathan's hand twitched toward his gun, but he caught himself. "Leave her out of it, or what?" Crawford straightened, his false amiability vanishing. "You'll shoot me like you shot my brother." Olivia gasped softly, unable to help herself. Nathan's jaw clenched, but he didn't deny the accusation. "Your brother drew first," he said flatly. "Same as you're fixing to do now." The tension in the store was suffocating. Olivia could feel her heart pounding against her ribs, her mouth dry with fear. But before the situation could escalate further, the door opened again, admitting Sheriff Tanner, who took in the scene with experienced eyes. "Gentlemen," he said, his hand resting meaningfully on his own holstered weapon. "Is there a problem here?" Crawford held Nathan's gaze a moment longer before turning to the sheriff with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No problem, Sheriff. Just catching up with an old acquaintance." "Well, take your catching up elsewhere," Tanner replied sternly. "Miss Grant doesn't need her store turned into a shooting gallery." With a last venomous glance at Nathan, Crawford and his companions departed. The sheriff lingered, giving Nathan a hard look. "Maddox, I don't know what history you've got with those men, but I won't have trouble in my town. You understand?" Nathan nodded once, his face unreadable. Tanner sighed. "See that your friend Barton gets well enough to travel soon. I think it might be best for all concerned if you moved on." After the sheriff left, an uncomfortable silence fell. Olivia finished gathering Nathan's supplies with trembling hands, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. "You shot someone," she said finally, looking up at him. Nathan met her gaze steadily. "Yes. Was it self-defense, like you said?" He nodded. Crawford's brother was a bank robber. I was working as a deputy marshal in Kansas when he and his gang hit the bank in Dodge City. He killed 2 people before I shot him. Then why do they blame you? Why are they after you now? Nathan's mouth twisted in a bitter approximation of a smile. Family loyalty doesn't always concern itself with right and wrong, Miss Grant. Olivia digested this, studying the man before her. Despite the revelation, she found she wasn't afraid of him. Whatever violence might lie in his past, she'd seen his gentleness with Owen, his concern for her safety just moments ago. "You don't have to leave," she said impulsively. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I think I do." Nathan paid for his supplies and left, his broad shoulders set in a rigid line that spoke of burdens too heavy to share. Olivia watched him go, troubled by the encounter and by her own inexplicable sense of loss at the thought of his departure. That evening, a spring storm blew in from the mountains, bringing with it memories of the night Nathan had first arrived in Provo. Olivia closed the shutters against the driving rain, lightning illuminating her small room in brief, stark flashes. A knock at her door startled her. Mr. Holloway rarely disturbed her after hours. "Who is it?" she called. "Nathan Maddox," came the reply, nearly drowned out by a clap of thunder. Surprised, Olivia opened the door to find Nathan standing there, rain-soaked and grim-faced. "Mr. Maddox, what Crawford and his men took Owen," he interrupted, the urgency of the situation apparently overriding his newfound reticence. "Left a note saying if I want to see him alive again, I'm to meet them at Miller's Creek at dawn. Alone." Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "Did you tell the sheriff?" Nathan's expression darkened. "Sheriff's out of town until tomorrow, dealing with some trouble in Springville. His deputy's greener than spring grass, he'd just get Owen killed. So you're going alone. That's madness. They'll kill you both." "I don't have a choice," he said simply. Olivia stepped back, pulling the door wider. "Come in. You're soaked through, and we need to think this through properly." Nathan hesitated, then entered her small room, removing his hat and standing awkwardly by the door as if afraid to drip on her belongings. "Why come to me?" Olivia asked as she fetched a towel. He accepted it with a nod of thanks. "You know some of the townspeople. Thought maybe you could help me find men willing to back my play. In this weather, at this hour," she shook her head. "Even if I could, they'd just go to the deputy and we'd be back where we started." Nathan ran a hand through his wet hair, frustration evident in the gesture. "Then I'll handle it myself. I've faced worse odds. And ended up unconscious for a day," she reminded him. "Your ribs aren't fully healed either." "What would you have me do? Leave Owen to die?" "No, of course not." Olivia paced the small room, thinking rapidly. "Miller's Creek is where the old mill used to stand, yes. I know that area. There's a ridge overlooking it, perfect for an ambush." Nathan's eyebrows rose. "You're suggesting I ambush them first?" "I'm suggesting we do it together," she corrected. "I'm a fair shot with a rifle." "My father made sure of that." "No." His refusal was immediate and firm. "I won't put you in danger." Olivia crossed her arms. "And I won't let you ride to your death out of some misguided sense of chivalry. Owen saved my life when we set his leg. You're the one who's been avoiding everyone since the stampede. Why come to me now if not for help?" Nathan stared at her, clearly taken aback by her vehemence. Finally, he sighed, the sound heavy with reluctance. "It's too dangerous." "Life is dangerous, Mr. Maddox, especially out here." She stepped closer, looking up into his troubled face. "I'm not some delicate flower that will wilt at the first sign of adversity. Let me help you." Their gazes held, a silent battle of wills. Olivia could see the moment something shifted in his eyes, not surrender, exactly, but recognition. Recognition that she was stronger than he'd given her credit for. "All right," he conceded. "But you stay on that ridge, well out of sight. If things go wrong, you ride back to town as fast as you can." "Understood." Olivia nodded, though she had no intention of abandoning him if the situation deteriorated. "I need to change into something more suitable for riding. Wait downstairs. I'll be quick." As Nathan turned to leave, she impulsively caught his arm. "We're going to bring Owen home safely." He looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then back to her face, a complex emotion in his eyes. "I hope you're right." The storm had begun to ease by the time they set out. the wind dying down to occasional gusts that bent the prairie grass in rippling waves. Olivia rode a sturdy mare borrowed from Mr. Holloway's stable, her father's old Winchester secured in a saddle scabbard. She changed into a split riding skirt and sturdy boots, with a heavy coat to ward off the pre-dawn chill. Nathan rode beside her in silence, his face set in grim lines. The easy camaraderie she'd glimpsed when he'd first arrived in Provo seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by this tightly wound man prepared for violence. They reached the ridge above Miller's Creek, while the eastern sky was still more black than gray. Nathan helped Olivia dismount, his hands strong and steady at her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "Stay here," he instructed, voice low. "There's good cover behind those rocks. You'll have a clear view of the creek bed." "What's your plan?" she whispered back. "To get Owen out alive." His mouth quirked in what might have been a smile under different circumstances. "Beyond that, I'm open to suggestion." Olivia touched his arm. "Be careful." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps at her concern. He covered her hand with his own briefly before pulling away. "Dawn's coming," he said. "I need to get in position." Olivia watched him go, a solitary figure descending the slope toward the creek bed where the ruins of the old mill stood silhouetted against the lightening sky. She settled behind the rocks with the rifle, grateful for the clear view afforded by her elevated position. As the first pale light of dawn crept over the horizon, she spotted movement among the mill ruins. 3 men emerged, one of them supporting, or more accurately, dragging a fourth figure that Olivia recognized as Owen. Even from this distance, she could see he was in a bad way, his head lolling forward as he struggled to stay on his feet. Nathan had positioned himself behind a large boulder at the edge of the creek bed. He stepped out now, hands deliberately away from his holstered pistol. "I'm here, Crawford," his voice carried clearly in the still morning air. "Let Owen go," Crawford laughed, the sound unnaturally loud. "That's not how this works, Maddox. You know what I want. Your brother died legally. I was doing my job. My brother died with a bullet in his back." Nathan shook his head. "That's a lie, and you know it. There were witnesses." Crawford shoved Owen forward, causing him to stumble and fall painfully to his knees. "Witnesses can be bought, or killed, which you'd know all about, wouldn't you?" From her position, Olivia could see Nathan's posture stiffen. "What are you talking about?" "Your whole sanctimonious act," Crawford spat. "Deputy Marshal Nathan Maddox, so righteous, so by the book. Does your friend here know about Silver Springs? Does he know what you did to those miners?" Nathan's voice, when he replied, was so low Olivia could barely hear it. "That's not what happened. No, tell that to the widows and orphans you left behind." Olivia tightened her grip on the rifle. Whatever Crawford was alluding to, it was clearly designed to provoke Nathan, to throw him off balance, and it seemed to be working. "I'm not here to discuss the past," Nathan said, visibly regaining control of himself. "I'm here for Owen. Let him go and you can have me." Crawford pretended to consider this. "Tempting, but I think I'd rather have you both." He nodded to one of his men, who drew his pistol and pointed it at Owen's head. Olivia didn't hesitate. She sighted down the barrel of her rifle and fired. The shot echoed off the canyon walls. Crawford's man cried out, dropping his gun and clutching his shoulder where Olivia's bullet had struck him. In the chaos that followed, Nathan drew his own weapon with lightning speed, firing twice in rapid succession. One of Crawford's men fell, the other dove for cover. Crawford, momentarily stunned by the unexpected assault, recovered quickly. He yanked Owen up, using him as a shield as he backed toward the mill ruins. "Show yourself," he shouted, scanning the ridge where Olivia was hidden. "Come out, or he dies." Nathan had taken cover behind the boulder again. "Let him go, Crawford. This is between you and me." Olivia knew she couldn't get a clean shot at Crawford without risking Owen, and if she revealed her position, she'd lose her tactical advantage. She needed to create a distraction. Looking around desperately, her eyes fell on a pile of loose rocks near the edge of the ridge. She fired again, deliberately missing but striking the rocks, sending a small avalanche tumbling down the slope away from her position. The ruse worked. Crawford's attention snapped toward the falling rocks, giving Nathan the opening he needed. He burst from cover, tackling both Crawford and Owen to the ground. Olivia watched in horror as the three men struggled, unable to fire for fear of hitting the wrong target. A shot rang out, then another. Silence fell. For a terrible moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Nathan rose to his feet, helping Owen up beside him. Crawford lay unmoving on the ground. Relief flooded through Olivia, so intense she felt momentarily light-headed. She slung the rifle over her shoulder and hurried down the slope, caution forgotten in her need to confirm they were both alive. Nathan saw her coming and raised a hand in warning. "The other one's still out there," he called, referring to Crawford's remaining man who had disappeared into the mill ruins. As if summoned by his words, the man emerged from hiding, gun raised and aimed squarely at Nathan's back. Olivia shouted a warning, but she was too far away, too slow. A shot cracked across the creek bed. The gunman staggered, a look of surprise crossing his face before he collapsed. Behind him stood Sheriff Tanner, rifle still raised. "Thought you said the sheriff was out of town," Olivia said breathlessly as she reached Nathan and Owen. Nathan looked as surprised as she felt. "He was supposed to be. Got back early," Tanner explained, approaching them. "Found your note at the boarding house, Maddox. Figured you might need some help, even if you were too stubborn to ask for it properly." Owen gave a weak laugh that turned into a groan. He was pale and bruised, with a cut above his eye that was still bleeding sluggishly, but he was alive. "You all right?" Nathan asked him, concern evident in his voice. Owen nodded. "Been better, but thanks to you and Miss Grant here, I reckon I'll live." Sheriff Tanner surveyed the scene grimly. "2 dead, 1 wounded. Going to be a lot of explaining to do, Maddox." Nathan met his gaze steadily. "They took Owen, threatened to kill him. We defended ourselves. And the lady's involvement was entirely my idea," Olivia cut in firmly. "Mr. Maddox tried to dissuade me." Tanner looked skeptical but nodded. "We'll sort it out back in town. Can you ride, Barton?" Owen grimaced. "If the alternative is staying here, I'll manage." The ride back to Provo was slow and largely silent. Nathan supported Owen, whose strength was flagging visibly by the time they reached the boarding house. Dr. Peterson was summoned, pronounced Owen battered but not seriously injured, and prescribed rest and whiskey in that order. The sheriff took statements from all involved, including the wounded member of Crawford's gang, who admitted they'd been tracking Nathan for months with the intention of avenging Crawford's brother. When pressed about the allegations concerning Silver Springs, the man claimed ignorance, saying it was something Crawford had learned about recently and had planned to use against Nathan. Tanner seemed satisfied with their accounts and declared the matter closed, at least as far as Provo was concerned. "Though you might want to clear up whatever this Silver Springs business is, Maddox," he added. "Sounds like the kind of thing that might follow you." After the sheriff left, Olivia found herself alone with Nathan in the boarding house's small parlor. Owen had been settled upstairs, already half asleep from exhaustion, and Dr. Peterson's medicinal whiskey. "Thank you," Nathan said after a long moment of silence, "for helping save Owen, for everything." Olivia studied his face. The taciturn mask he'd worn since the stampede had slipped, revealing something vulnerable beneath. "Will you tell me about Silver Springs?" Nathan stiffened, his gaze dropping to his hands. For a moment she thought he might refuse, retreat once more into silence. But then he sighed. "It was 3 years ago. I was part of a posse sent to arrest a man named Harlan Weber, wanted for murder in Kansas. We tracked him to a mining camp at Silver Springs, Colorado." He paused, the memory clearly painful. Weber had taken up with the miners there, convinced them the law was corrupt, that we were coming to shut down their operation on behalf of some big mining company. "Were you?" Nathan shook his head. "We were just after Weber. But when we rode into town, they were waiting for us, opened fire before we could explain why we were there." "What happened?" Olivia asked softly when he fell silent again. "Blood happened," he said, his voice hollow. "Weber had them convinced we'd shoot first and ask questions later, so that's what they did. 3 lawmen dead in the first volley. The rest of us returned fire. By the time it was over, 8 miners were dead too, including Weber." Olivia's heart ached for him. "It wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" His eyes, when they met hers, were haunted. I was the ranking officer after the marshal went down. I gave the order to return fire. 8 men died because of a decision I made in the heat of the moment. 8 men died because a murderer manipulated them into attacking officers of the law, she countered firmly. You defended yourself and your colleagues. Nathan's expression softened slightly. That's what the inquiry found too, but knowing that doesn't make it any easier to live with. Is that why you left the marshal service? He nodded. Couldn't stomach it anymore, went back to what I knew before cattle, been drifting with Owen ever since, taking whatever jobs came our way. Olivia moved to sit beside him on the small settee, and the silence after the stampede. A flush of embarrassment colored his cheeks. That was, after I got kicked, everything seemed too loud, too much, words included, and then it just became easier not to talk than to try explaining things no one would understand anyway. I understand, she said simply. His eyes searched her face, looking for something judgment, perhaps, or pity. Finding neither, he exhaled slowly, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Yes, he said softly. I believe you do. The days that followed brought a gradual return to normalcy. Owen continued to recover, his leg healing well enough that he could move about on crutches for short periods. The cattle Nathan and his men had been driving were sold to Simmons, who offered a fair price despite the trouble they'd caused, and Nathan began to speak again. Not as freely as before his injury, perhaps, but enough that people stopped commenting on his silence. With Olivia, he was almost talkative, especially during the evenings when she would visit the boarding house after closing the store. 2 weeks after the confrontation at Miller's Creek, Nathan found Olivia organizing new inventory at the general store. Mr. Holloway had gone to Salt Lake City for supplies, leaving her in charge. Miss Grant, Nathan greeted her, hat in hand. Do you have a moment? Olivia smiled, pleased as always to see him. Of course, how is Owen today? Complaining about being cooped up, which I take as a good sign. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. I wanted to let you know that I'll be leaving tomorrow. The cattle are sold, and Owen's well enough to travel by wagon. We've hired one to take us to Denver, where he has family who can look after him while he finishes healing. The news, though not unexpected, hit Olivia harder than she'd anticipated. I see, that's good news for Owen. Nathan studied her face. Would you have dinner with me tonight? At the hotel, surprised by the invitation, Olivia nodded. I'd like that. That evening, dressed in her best blue dress, Olivia met Nathan at the hotel dining room. He'd cleaned up well, his dark hair neatly combed, his usual trail clothes replaced by a clean shirt and vest. The sight of him waiting for her, a tentative smile lighting his features when he spotted her, made her heart beat faster. The dinner was pleasant, their conversation flowing more easily than Olivia would have thought possible given Nathan's recent reticence. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, about his brief career as a lawman, and about the years since, drifting from job to job with Owen as his constant companion. What will you do after Denver? She asked as they lingered over coffee. Nathan hesitated. I'm not sure. There's always work for men who know cattle, more drifting then. He studied her face. Would that bother you? Olivia looked down at her cup. It's not my place to be bothered by your choices, Mr. Maddox. Nathan, he corrected gently, and I'm asking if it would bother you, Olivia. Her name on his lips sent a shiver through her. Yes, she admitted quietly, I suppose it would. Nathan reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. I've been thinking about staying in Provo. Olivia's heart leapt. You have? He nodded. Simmons mentioned he might need a foreman. Said he's getting too old to manage the place on his own. And Owen, would he stay too? He's eager to see his family in Denver, but after that, who knows? He might come back, might find something else. Nathan's fingers twined more securely with hers. The point is, I'm considering putting down roots if I had a reason to. The meaning behind his words was unmistakable. Olivia felt a blush rising to her cheeks. Nathan, too soon? He asked, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. No, she said quickly, not too soon, just unexpected. In the best possible way. Relief and something warmer replaced the uncertainty in his eyes. I don't have much to offer. My reputation's complicated, as you've seen firsthand, but I care for you, Olivia. more than I thought possible after knowing someone such a short time. I care for you too, she replied, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. And I don't give a fig about your reputation. His smile then was the most genuine she'd seen from him, transforming his face in a way that made her breath catch. In that case, would you walk with me? There's a full moon tonight. The night air was cool but not unpleasant as they strolled through Provo's quiet streets. Nathan offered Olivia his arm, and she took it, acutely aware of his solid presence beside her. They ended up at the small park near the church, sitting on a bench beneath a large cottonwood tree. The moon bathed everything in silver light, turning the ordinary scene into something magical. I never thought I'd consider settling down anywhere, Nathan admitted after a comfortable silence. Not after Silver Springs. Felt like I didn't deserve it somehow. Olivia turned to face him more fully. Everyone deserves a chance at happiness, Nathan, even especially those who have known sorrow. He studied her face in the moonlight, his expression softening. You make me believe that might be true. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, almost tentative at first, but when Olivia responded, her hand coming up to rest against his cheek, the kiss deepened into something more profound. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I should take you home before your reputation suffers for being seen with the likes of me. Olivia smiled. I told you I don't care about that. Well, I do, he said firmly, though he pressed another quick kiss to her lips before standing and offering his hand. Come on, we have tomorrow to figure out the rest. But tomorrow brought unexpected complications. Olivia had just opened the store when a telegram arrived for Nathan, delivered by a breathless young boy who said it had come in overnight and was marked urgent. She found Nathan at the boarding house, helping Owen pack for their journey. His face darkened as he read the telegram's contents. Bad news, Olivia asked, trying to quell the sudden anxiety in her chest. Nathan passed her the telegram wordlessly. It was brief. Weber's brother asking questions about Silver Springs. Looking for you, watch your back. Jenkins. Who's Jenkins? She asked. Former colleague from the Marshal Service, Nathan replied, already moving to check his pistol. If he's warning me, the threat is real. Owen looked up from his packing, concern evident on his face. You think they'll come here, eventually? Weber's brother is as dangerous as Harlan was, from what I've heard. Olivia's heart sank. So you have to leave after all. Nathan turned to her, his expression torn. Olivia, I can't stay here and put everyone at risk, not after what happened with Crawford. Then take me with you, she said impulsively. Both men stared at her. Owen recovered first, a slow grin spreading across his face. Now there's an idea. It's not an idea, it's madness, Nathan countered, though Olivia could see the conflict in his eyes. I couldn't ask you to leave your home, your job, everything you know. You're not asking, I'm offering. Olivia stepped closer to him. Nathan, I've spent 3 years in Provo since my parents died. It's been safe, comfortable even, but it's never felt like home, not really. And riding into danger with me would, he shook his head. You deserve better than that. What I deserve is the chance to make my own choices, she replied firmly, and I choose you, danger and all. Nathan looked to Owen as if seeking support for his position, but his friend held up his hands. Don't look at me, the lady makes a compelling argument. A storm of emotions crossed Nathan's face, hope, fear, longing, and something deeper that made Olivia's breath catch. Finally, he sighed, a sound of surrender. If you really want to come with us, we'll need to leave within the hour, and you should know what you're getting into. This won't be a pleasure trip. We'll be watching our backs every mile to Denver. Olivia nodded, her decision already made. I'll pack only what I need. And I'll speak to Mr. Holloway. To her surprise, Mr. Holloway took the news of her sudden departure with equanimity. Always thought you were meant for more than stocking shelves in Provo, he said, patting her hand awkwardly. Your father would have said the same, I expect. He insisted on paying her wages in full, plus a bonus for all your extra help, and promised to find her replacement without difficulty. Mrs. Peterson's niece is arriving next week from back east. Girl needs work, from what I hear. Within the hour, Olivia was ready. She had packed a single carpet bag with clothing and necessities. plus a small leather pouch containing her mother's wedding ring and the few letters her parents had left behind. Everything else, the furniture in her room, her books, the dishes she'd collected, she left for Mr. Holloway to dispose of as he saw fit. They left Provo as a spring storm was brewing, dark clouds gathering over the mountains in an echo of the night Nathan and Owen had first arrived. The wagon they'd purchased was sturdy, if not comfortable, with Owen settled in the back among their supplies, and Olivia seated beside Nathan on the driver's bench. As the town receded behind them, Olivia felt a momentary pang of doubt. Was she being recklessly impulsive? Throwing away security for a man she'd known barely a month? But then Nathan glanced at her, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, and the doubt vanished. Whatever lay ahead, she knew with bone-deep certainty that this was right. The storm caught them that evening, forcing them to make camp earlier than planned in the shelter of a rocky outcropping. They managed to erect a crude lean-to against the wagon, just enough to keep the worst of the rain off while they huddled around a small fire Nathan had somehow coaxed to life despite the dampness. Owen had fallen into an exhausted sleep, leaving Nathan and Olivia sitting side by side, watching the storm rage around them. The wind howled through the rocks, driving the rain in sheets that hissed as they struck the heated stones near their fire. Having regrets yet? Nathan asked, his voice nearly drowned by a crash of thunder. Olivia shook her head. Not a single one. He studied her face in the flickering firelight. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolhardy. Perhaps a bit of both, she admitted with a small smile. The wind gusted strongly, nearly extinguishing their fire. Nathan shifted closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders to shield her from the worst of it. Olivia leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid warmth. It was a night like this when my parents died, she said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. There was a storm, and they were returning from helping a family outside town who had fallen ill. Their wagon went off the road near the river. They were found the next day. Nathan's arm tightened around her. I'm sorry. It was 3 years ago, she sighed. Sometimes I wonder what they would think of me now, running off with a cowboy I barely know. And what do you think they'd say? He asked softly. Olivia considered this, remembering her father's gentle wisdom, her mother's practical courage. I think they'd say life is too short and too precious to spend it being careful all the time. That sometimes the greatest risk is taking no risk at all. Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then, his voice barely audible above the storm, he said, I think I would have liked your parents. They would have liked you too, she replied with certainty. The wind continued to howl around them, but in their small shelter, with the fire casting dancing shadows and Nathan's arm steady around her shoulders, Olivia felt strangely at peace. Whatever dangers tomorrow might bring, tonight they were safe. Tonight they were together. The cowboy didn't speak after the storm, but she sat beside him until the wind died down, both of them watching as the clouds parted to reveal a sky brilliant with stars. The journey to Denver proved less perilous than Nathan had feared. They saw no sign of pursuit, no indication that Weber's brother had picked up their trail. Owen's leg continued to improve, though the constant jostling of the wagon slowed his recovery somewhat. By the time they reached Denver, nearly 2 weeks after leaving Provo, a tentative optimism had begun to replace Nathan's vigilant wariness. Perhaps he allowed himself to hope they had outrun trouble this time. Owen's family welcomed them warmly, insisting that Nathan and Olivia stay at their comfortable home on the outskirts of the growing city. Owen's sister Martha, a widow with 2 young children, took Olivia under her wing immediately, grateful for another female presence in the household. It's been too long since I've had someone to talk to besides my brother and my children, she confided as she showed Olivia to the guest room. And anyone who would follow this stubborn man across the territory must be worth knowing. Life settled into an unexpected rhythm. Nathan found work at a nearby ranch, his skills with horses and cattle earning him immediate respect despite his reticence about his past. Olivia, to her surprise, was offered a position teaching at the local school when the previous teacher eloped unexpectedly with a traveling salesman. "I'm not trained as a teacher," she protested when the school board approached her. "You're educated, you're good with children, Martha's to adore you already, and you're available," the board chairman replied practically. "The children need someone now, not after we find the perfect candidate." So Olivia found herself standing before 23 children ranging in age from 6 to 14, drawing on half-remembered lessons from her own schooling and a natural aptitude for explanation that she hadn't known she possessed. She discovered, to her delight, that she loved teaching. Loved the moment when understanding dawned in a child's eyes, loved the order and purpose of her days, loved even the challenges presented by her more rambunctious students. Nathan seemed to flourish as well. The haunted look that had shadowed his eyes since Silver Springs gradually faded, replaced by a quiet contentment that showed itself most clearly in the evenings, when he would listen to Olivia describe her day's adventures with her pupils. 3 months after their arrival in Denver, on a warm summer evening, Nathan took Olivia for a walk along the river that wound through the city. The setting sun painted the water in shades of gold and crimson, while the first stars began to appear in the deepening blue of the eastern sky. "I've been thinking," Nathan said as they paused on a small footbridge looking out over the water. "A dangerous pastime," Olivia teased gently. He smiled, more freely than he once had. "Maybe so, but I've been thinking about the future, our future if you'll have me." Olivia's heart quickened. "What about it?" Nathan turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I love you, Olivia. I think I have since that first day in Provo when you stood up to me about Owen's leg, all 5 feet, nothing of you ordering around a stranger twice your size." She laughed, blinking back sudden tears. "I love you too, even when you were at your most taciturn. I know I don't have much to offer," he continued, his voice growing serious. "But I've saved almost everything I've earned these past months, enough for a small place of our own if we're careful." Or, she prompted when he hesitated, "or enough to keep traveling if that's what you want. I know you've taken to teaching here, but there are schools everywhere. We could go west to California or north to Montana, wherever you want to start fresh." Olivia considered this. She had grown comfortable in Denver, had found unexpected fulfillment in her work at the school. But the city had never quite felt like home, not the way she imagined home should feel. "What about Owen?" she asked. "And Weber's brother?" Nathan shrugged. "Owen's happy here with his family." As for Weber, well, there's been no sign of him. Maybe Jenkins was being overcautious, or maybe he's lost our trail. "For now," Olivia said, not entirely convinced. "For now," Nathan agreed. "But I can't build a life around waiting for trouble that might never come. None of us can." He was right, Olivia knew, and yet the specter of Nathan's past still loomed, a shadow that could darken their future at any moment. "What do you want?" she asked him. "Not what you think I want or what seems safest. What do you truly want, Nathan?" He considered this carefully, his eyes on the river flowing steadily beneath them. "I want peace," he said finally. "The kind of peace I've started to find with you. I want to wake up each morning knowing exactly where I belong in the world. And I want to build something that lasts, something good to balance out the harm I've done." "Then let's do that," Olivia said simply. "Let's build something that lasts." Nathan's expression softened, hope and love mingling in his gaze. "Olivia Grant, will you marry me?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Yes, I will." He kissed her then, there on the bridge with the last light of day fading around them, a kiss that held promise and passion and a future neither of them could have imagined when they'd first met during that spring storm in Provo. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the local church, with Owen standing as Nathan's best man and Martha as Olivia's matron of honor. The school board gave Olivia their blessing, along with a modest wedding gift of a patchwork quilt made by the mothers of her students. With their combined savings, they purchased a small parcel of land 10 miles outside Denver, far enough from the city to offer the peace Nathan craved, but close enough for Olivia to continue teaching. The property included a modest cabin that needed repairs, a barn in better condition than the house, and several acres of good grazing land. "It's perfect," Olivia declared when they first visited their new home. "Or it will be once we fix that roof." Nathan laughed, the sound still rare enough to delight her. One step at a time, Mrs. Maddox. The name sent a thrill through her, still new enough to feel like a precious gift. Olivia Maddox, a new identity to match her new life. They moved in the following week, bringing with them the few possessions they'd accumulated: Nathan's tools and saddle, Olivia's books and teaching supplies, wedding gifts from friends and neighbors, and the sturdy furniture Owen had insisted on giving them to start you off right. Life settled into a rhythm dictated by the seasons and their respective duties. Nathan tended the small herd of cattle they'd purchased, while also hiring out his skills to neighboring ranches when extra income was needed. Olivia continued teaching, riding to and from the schoolhouse each day on the gentle mare Nathan had bought her as a wedding present. In the evenings, they would sit on their small porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and purple, talking about their days or sometimes just enjoying each other's companionable silence. Nathan still had moments of reticence, times when the weight of his past seemed to press upon him, but they grew less frequent as the months passed. Winter came, bringing with it heavy snows that often kept Olivia home from school. She found she didn't mind the enforced isolation, cherishing instead the long days spent with Nathan, planning improvements to their home and dreaming of the future. It was during one such snowbound day, as they sat before the fire Nathan had built, that Olivia shared her news. "I won't be able to finish the school year," she said, watching his face carefully. Nathan frowned in concern. "Are you unwell?" "Not exactly." She took his hand, placing it gently over her still flat stomach. "But by June, I expect I'll be rather busy with other matters." Understanding dawned slowly in his eyes, replaced immediately by a joy so pure it took her breath away. "A baby, you're sure?" Olivia nodded, tears of happiness pricking at her eyes. "Dr. Williams confirmed it yesterday when I went into town. We're going to have a child, Nathan." He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of the most precious porcelain. "I never thought," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "After everything, I never imagined I could be this happy." "You deserve happiness," she whispered fiercely. "We both do." The months that followed were filled with preparations and anticipation. Nathan threw himself into improvements to their home with renewed vigor, determined to make it worthy of their growing family. He added a second bedroom, reinforced the roof, and built a cradle of polished pine that Olivia declared the most beautiful piece of furniture she'd ever seen. Owen visited often, his leg now fully healed, though he still walked with a slight limp in cold weather. He brought news from Denver, including word that the school board had hired a permanent replacement for Olivia, though they say no one teaches arithmetic half as well as you did. Spring arrived with a riot of wildflowers across the plains, and with it came a letter that shattered their hard-won peace. It arrived via Owen, who had collected their mail in town. "It's from Jenkins," Nathan said, his face growing grave as he read. "Weber's brother is in Denver. He's been asking questions about us." Olivia placed a protective hand over her swollen belly. "How did he find us?" "Jenkins doesn't say." Nathan passed a hand over his face, a gesture she recognized as one of his rare moments of true fear, but it was always a matter of time. "I should have known we couldn't just outrun the past." Owen, who had been watching this exchange with growing concern, spoke up. "What are you going to do?" Nathan's gaze met Olivia's, a silent communication passing between them. "I won't run," he said finally. "Not anymore. This is our home. Our child's future. Then we face this together," Olivia said firmly. "No," Nathan shook his head emphatically. "You're 7 months pregnant, Olivia. I won't risk you or the baby." "What's your plan then?" Owen asked. "Wait for him to find you out here alone." Nathan's silence was answer enough. "That's madness," Owen protested. "At least let me stay. 2 guns are better than 1. And leave Martha and the children unprotected." "No," Nathan's tone brooked no argument. "This is my fight, my past catching up with me." Olivia rose from her chair, moving to stand before her husband. "Nathan Maddox, if you think I'm going to leave you to face this alone, you don't know me at all. This is our home, our life. We fight for it together or not at all." Nathan looked down at her, frustration and love warring in his expression. "And if something happens to you, to our child, how could I live with that?" "Nothing will happen," she insisted with more confidence than she felt. "We'll be prepared. And when Weber comes, he'll find that you're not the same man who left Silver Springs. You have something to fight for now." In the end, they compromised. Olivia would go to stay with Martha in Denver, but only after they had made preparations at the ranch preparations that might give Nathan a fighting chance against whatever Weber had planned. The next days were a flurry of activity. They reinforced doors and windows, positioned furniture to provide cover if needed, and established escape routes in case the worst happened. Owen brought extra ammunition and supplies, along with news that Weber had been seen asking questions at the saloons near the stockyards. "He knows you're in the area," Owen reported grimly. "It's just a matter of time before he narrows it down further." 3 days after Jenkins' warning arrived, Nathan insisted it was time for Olivia to go to Denver. "The preparations are as complete as they'll ever be," he told her as they stood on their porch in the fading light of evening. "Owen will take you to Martha's tomorrow." Olivia nodded, tears she refused to shed burning behind her eyes. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you'll come back to us." Nathan placed his hand gently on her belly where their child moved restlessly. "With everything I am," he vowed, "you and this little one are my whole world now." That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, a spring storm rolled in from the mountains. The wind rose, rattling the newly reinforced shutters, driving rain against the roof in rhythmic waves. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating their room in stark white light. Neither of them slept much, each lost in thoughts of what tomorrow might bring. Olivia counted the movements of their child, drawing comfort from each flutter and kick. Nathan held her close, his hand never straying far from the swell of her belly, as if trying to memorize the feeling of his family safe in his arms. As dawn approached, the storm began to ease, the wind dying down to occasional gusts that still carried the scent of rain. Olivia slipped from bed, unable to lie still any longer. She moved to the window, pushing aside the curtain to look out at their land washed clean by the night's downpour, and saw a rider approaching through the gray light of early morning. "Nathan," she said, her voice steadier than she would have expected. "Someone's coming." He was beside her in an instant, his expression hardening as he confirmed what she'd seen. "Stay here," he instructed, already reaching for his gun belt. "Keep away from the windows." But Olivia caught his arm. "Wait, it's just one rider. If it were Weber, wouldn't he bring others?" Nathan hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Maybe, or maybe he's scouting ahead." He peered more intently through the window. "Can't make out who it is yet." They watched in tense silence as the rider drew closer. When he was about 50 yards from the house, Nathan let out a breath of mingled relief and confusion. "It's Jenkins," he said. "What in the world is he doing here?" Without waiting for an answer, Nathan strapped on his gun belt and headed for the door. Olivia followed, ignoring his protests. If this was his former colleague, she wanted to hear what he had to say directly. They met Jenkins at the edge of their yard. He was a weathered man in his 50s, with gray streaked hair and the watchful eyes of someone who'd spent too many years looking over his shoulder. "Maddox," he greeted Nathan with a nod. "Mrs. Maddox," he added, his gaze taking in Olivia's condition with a flicker of concern. "What brings you here, Jenkins?" Nathan asked. "Your letter said Weber was in Denver." "He was," Jenkins dismounted with a grimace, stretching his back. "Not anymore. That's why I rode out here myself instead of sending another letter." A cold dread settled in Olivia's stomach. What happened? Jenkins sighed. "Weber got himself killed in a saloon fight 2 nights ago, accused the wrong man of cheating at cards, reached for his gun, and ended up with a bullet through his heart." Nathan stared at him in disbelief. "Dead, just like that," Jenkins confirmed. "I saw the body myself, made sure it was him. It's over, Maddox." The relief that flooded through Olivia was so intense it made her knees weak. Nathan steadied her with an arm around her shoulders, his own face showing the same stunned disbelief she felt. "Come inside," she told Jenkins once she'd found her voice again. "You must be exhausted after riding all night." Over a breakfast of coffee, biscuits, and bacon, Jenkins explained more fully. Weber had been increasingly erratic in his quest for revenge, drinking heavily and picking fights with anyone he suspected might know Nathan's whereabouts. To be honest, even if he had found you, I'm not sure he'd have been much of a threat, Jenkins admitted. Man was half drunk most of the time. But I couldn't take that chance, not after everything that happened at Silver Springs. I appreciate that, Nathan said quietly, more than I can say. Jenkins shrugged uncomfortably, clearly unused to such sentiment. Just doing right by an old colleague. He looked between them, his gaze lingering on Olivia's belly. When's the little one due? June, Olivia replied, still hardly able to believe their shadow of fear had been lifted so suddenly, so completely. Good time to bring a child into the world, Jenkins nodded approvingly. Spring planting done, summer's bounty ahead. After breakfast, Nathan walked Jenkins back to his horse. Olivia watched from the porch as the two men spoke, their conversation too low for her to hear but their body language suggesting a final settling of old business. When Jenkins had ridden away and Nathan returned to her side, she finally allowed herself to release the tears she'd been holding back. It's really over. We're safe. Nathan gathered her into his arms, his own emotions evident in the slight tremor of his hands. It's over, he confirmed. No more looking over our shoulders, no more waiting for the past to catch up with us. What do we do now? She asked, half laughing through her tears. Nathan smiled, a full, unguarded smile that transformed his face. Now, Olivia Maddox, we live. We raise our child, we tend our land, we build that future we've been talking about. And so they did. Their son was born on a bright June morning, a strong, healthy boy they named Thomas after Olivia's father. Owen arrived a week later, bearing gifts and news that Martha had decided to move her family out to a property neighboring theirs. She says the city's no place to raise children, and I can't say I disagree. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. Their herd grew, as did their family. A daughter, Elizabeth, joined them 2 years after Thomas, followed by another son, James, 3 years later. The cabin expanded to accommodate them all, with Nathan adding rooms as needed, his skills as a builder improving with each project. Olivia found fulfillment in motherhood, but also in the small school they helped establish for the growing number of children in their area. She taught 3 days a week, passing on her love of learning to a new generation, including her own children. Nathan never fully returned to the talkative man he'd been before Silver Springs. Some wounds leave permanent marks, but neither was he the silent, brooding figure who had arrived in Provo that stormy evening. He found his voice in the stories he told his children, in the advice he gave to neighboring ranchers, and in the quiet conversations with Olivia as they sat on their porch each evening, watching the sun set over the land they'd made their own. On the 10th anniversary of their arrival in Colorado, they hosted a celebration that brought together friends and neighbors from miles around. Owen was there, now married himself to a quiet, capable woman who ran the local post office. Martha and her children came, the eldest now nearly grown and talking of college back east. Even Jenkins appeared, grayer and more stooped but still sharp-eyed and quick with a story from his martial days. As the festivities wound down and their guests departed, Olivia and Nathan found themselves alone on their porch, much as they had been on so many evenings over the years. Their children were asleep inside, the ranch quiet except for the occasional lowing of cattle and the constant chorus of night insects. "Did you ever imagine this?" Olivia asked, her head resting comfortably on Nathan's shoulder. "That night in Provo, when you didn't speak after the storm, and I sat beside you until the wind died down, did you ever imagine we'd be here?" Nathan's arm tightened around her waist. "Not in my wildest dreams," he admitted. "I thought I'd lost any chance at a life like this. And now." He turned to look at her, the love in his eyes as clear and strong as it had been on their wedding day. "Now I know better than to question miracles when they happen. I just give thanks for them." Olivia smiled, thinking of the journey that had brought them here from a storm-swept night in a small Utah town to this peaceful homestead under a Colorado sky. A journey marked by danger and loss, yes, but also by courage and love and, ultimately, redemption. "So do I," she whispered, leaning up to kiss him as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. every single day.